Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden, but we're going to head up towards Gothenburg once again, or Göteborg as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. My catchphrase for the channel these days apparently, and we're going to return to one of the more established Swedish craft breweries and also one of my personal favourites actually. And you've seen me review a good number of beers from these guys on the channel before. So for this review then we are going to go a little bit to the east of the city, to Landvetter, and we're having a look at another beer from Bryggeri. So this one is another member of the Crush series. This is the Bubble Gummy, a double IPA coming in at 8% ABV, released on the 1st of August 2020 as part of the Lokal Småskaligt assortment in Systembolaget. So yeah, pretty curious to see how this one turns out. The last beer that I reviewed from Bryggeri was of course the Sunshine Orchard, also part of the Crush series, and the brewery actually commented on that video and said to me that that was going to be the first of a number of double IPAs that they'd be releasing over the next few months. So curious to see what comes in the next few local assortments in Systembolaget. We'll need to just wait and see. I do also have a sour beer to review from these guys, the Do Sour, which I think is a pastry sour. You'll see that review coming up in a week or two, something like that, so you can look forward to that. But yeah, always keen to try the new beers that Bryggeri are releasing. Over the last few months it's mainly been stouts and sours and things like that they've been releasing, so it's only last month in July that they released an IPA. That must have been the first IPA they released in about 4 or 5 months, something like that actually. So a welcome change from these guys, I have to say. But yeah, a very, very capable brewery in my experience, not afraid to try different styles, and yeah, you're always in for a bit of a treat if you come across a Bryggeri beer. So for those of you watching outside of Sweden, this is one of the breweries that I really, really recommend you check out if you get the chance. Most of the export beers you'll find from these guys will be the stouts and things like that. If you come across a coffee stout from these guys, in my opinion, these guys are one of the best coffee stout producers in the world. The Key and the Sedamo Dim 2 are probably my favourite beers that I've had from these guys so far. So if you do see those, buy them up. But yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. As always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Brewery before, and like I said, you will see more added to that list in the near future. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely, hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Bryggeri then. So on to my brewery notes. So as I've told you many a time before, Bryggeri are based just a little bit out to the east of Gothenburg in Landvetter, very close to the airport, and the brewery is one of the more established ones in the country. It was established back in 2005 in Mölndal to the south of Gothenburg by Mikael Engström Dugge, who of course it takes its name from. A few years previously, Mikael had met an Englishman who was selling second-hand breweries, and this really got him thinking about brewing his own beer. So after this, he studied the Swedish alcohol laws, he visited various other breweries around the country, and then he started buying equipment and put together his own brewery, which culminated in the opening of the first brewery in Mölndal, as I said, back in 2005. Over the coming years, that brewery gradually expanded, but you know, it very quickly became too small for purpose, and by 2009, they were ready to move, so they moved to Landvetter the following year in 2010. So the older brewery had a capacity of 1,500 hectolitres of beer per year, but the new brewery started off with a capacity of 8,000 hectolitres of beer per year, but this has been more than doubled in recent years. Over the years, the brewery have become known mainly for kind of fruit beers and sours, but they originally were called the I think was it the Dugas Ale and Porter Brewery, if I remember rightly. So you know, they mainly became known for their kind of fruit sours and things like this. They didn't really start doing IPAs until a lot more recently, to be honest with you. It was mainly big imperial stouts that they brewed in the early days, and those fruit sours, like I said. But they've also been investing recently quite heavily in a barrel aging program, which has produced some really nice beers. And they also now have the Crush double IPA series, and they've also got the Fresh IPA or Paleo series. I can't remember exactly what the what the alcohol percentage of those is. They've also got their Imperial Stout series as well, and I wish that they would start a series for coffee stouts as well. It'd be awesome for them to do they've got a lovely base for coffee stouts. I'd love to see them just go around and experiment with lots of different coffee beans, as they did with the Key and the Sidamo Dimtu, because I genuinely believe these guys are one of the best coffee stout producers that you're going to find. But Dugas Brewery are also one of the owners of the two Brewers Beer Bars in Gothenburg. They own that along with Electric Nurse, which is run by Ida, Mikael's daughter, and her husband John, if I remember his name rightly. Very good brewery that I recommend you check out as well. They brew all their beers at the Dugas Brewery, of course, and it's also partly owned by the guys that own All In Brewing as well, who of course run the All In Fest, and they're one of the very well respected gypsy brewers in Gothenburg. I've not had a beer from them in a very long time actually. I need to see what they've got available through Systembolaget actually. But yeah, as I said, these guys have been going for a very long time. They very recently celebrated their 15th anniversary. If you go and have a look at my reviews of the 15 Sour, 15 IPA and 15 Stout, you know, those beers were very, very interesting, but I have to say not my favourite ones that I've had from Dugas actually. They went a little bit crazy on those and it was a sort of novelty thing. But yeah, probably my favourite beers, like I said, the Egypt is a little bit of a classic Imperial Stout. The Key and the Sidamo Dimtu were beautiful beers, and then anything you can get from the Crush series tends to be very, very nice as well. The what was it called? The Airports and Windmills, if I remember right, they were Airplanes and Windmills. That one was another very, very nice beer from them as well. That was a collaboration with Brouwerij de Molen from the Netherlands, of course. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Dugas Brewery for the moment. As I say, one of the very well respected Swedish breweries, not afraid to try different styles, and they always tend to put out some very, very interesting beers, so definitely worth checking if you are interested in Swedish beer. If you want to learn more about this brewery, you can check out the brewery website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram, and you can of course check out all the different beers on Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate. The one thing that's inaccurate about the Untappd page is that it says there's only about 47 beers being produced by Dugas Brewery, but I'm pretty sure it's way, way more than that, considering these guys have been around 15 years. But yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer and see how we get on. So as you can see, the artwork of this one is kind of pretty similar to what you would expect if you know the brewery. They've got this kind of very kind of straight up kind of how do you say, it's just very kind of modern sort of thing. I'm completely artistically illiterate, I would say. But there you can see one of the Dugas Brewery symbols. There is the other one on the other side of the bottle there. It tells you a little bit on the side here, the Crush Series Double IPA. The Crush Series is all we've learnt during our journey towards the perfect double IPA. Hops everywhere and haze all over, fruity notes in abundance, and then some. This is bubble gummy, so hoppy you can chew it lush. So yeah, plain gold bottle cap on this one, as you usually get from Dugas Brewery, and yeah, 330ml bottle this one. One of the interesting things about Dugas, of course, is that they've never moved away from using the bottles. Actually, they've always stuck with these 330ml bottles. So yeah, they brew their IPAs. I think they've got a brewery over in the States who brew some of their IPAs from them as well, and they put them out there now, which is pretty cool. So some of you might come across some American brewed versions of the Dugas beers, because you know they export the stouts directly from Sweden, but they brew the IPAs, I believe, under contract at a brewery in the States. I forget who it is that does that for them again, but yeah, might be 2 Cents Brewing or 12 Cents Brewing, something like that they're called. But yeah, let's get this guy out then, and we'll get on with the tasting. There we go. I would love to see a proper West Coast IPA from Dugas Brewery at some point as well. You know, I don't think I've ever had a West Coaster from these guys. Like a properly old school West Coast IPA would be a lovely thing to try from these guys too. So Mikael, if you're watching, please see about doing that. That would be awesome. But yeah, as you can see with this one, this is poured a lovely kind of quite, I'd say this is a medium yellow rather than anything else. It looks a little bit like a kind of mango juice. One of the more kind of, I've had New England IPAs that are a bit, you know, that are paler than this one. You can see that this beer poured with about a third finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. That is just fading away to be a very thin foamy layer now. 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, but you know, overall this beer doesn't really have anything surprising about its appearance when you consider what style it is. So yeah, put my fingers behind the glass, you can see it is pretty damn hazy. The thing with these New Englands, of course, is that the higher up the alcohol scale you go, they are going to get progressively more hazy because more wheat and more oats, etc. But yeah, definitely one of the more kind of medium yellow ones that I've come across in all of these 2,300 reviews. So yeah, let's have a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one. Really curious about this, I have to say. Ooh, it smells pretty nice. This one's got a good bit of tropical fruit pungency to it, I would say. But of course, we'll focus on the malt base first. So for me, this one, it comes across as very well balanced in its malt base. I mean, you have a little bit, you've definitely got a wee bit of a kind of wheaty note to this one. I think the wheat in this is a little bit more prominent than some of the other Dougas ones I've had recently. The wheat definitely has a little bit more pungency to it. You've got a nice bit of oaty creaminess in there as well. Maybe a few biscuity aromas and a little bit of a slightly Werther's Originally type thing going on in this one. That's sometimes, you know, it's the way the yeast and the oats and the wheat interact can give you that impression. It's the booziness, of course. That's the boozy part of the beer. And 8%, you know, you do have a fair little bit of that. And I've always said with New England IPAs, when you start to go above the 8% mark, you really have to add a little bit of a kind of carapils or you know, a caramel or something like that, just to give the beer a little bit of sweetness, rather than you know, relying solely on the wheat and the oats to kind of cover the booziness. It's one of the problems you never had with the West Coast IPAs. But yeah, this one to me, the more that I smell it, the more the wheat gets a little bit more pungent, I think. The oats are very, very creamy in this one, and you do get more of that kind of... you do get a little bit more of that sort of... How would you describe it? A little bit more of the... that kind of Werther's Originally... It's almost very slightly banana-ish, like a wheaty, like almost like a kind of Hefeweizen. You do get a little bit of that very... You do almost get a wee tiny bit of a wee Hefeweizen vibe coming out of this one, from the way that the oats and the wheat and the yeast are all interacting together. So yeah, this one's definitely got a bit more pungency to the malt base, I think, than some of the other ones I've had from this series. But yeah, the more and more that you smell of it, the more it does kind of smooth out a little bit. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, don't think there's much more to say about the malty side of it, in fairness. It's not doing anything you wouldn't expect, but as I say, just a little bit more wheaty and pungent compared to some of the other Dougas beers that I've had before. But yeah, this one, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness at the back of the nose there. You've got a good little bit of floral aromaticity coming out of the beer as well. Yeah, good little bit of, it's almost a little touch spicy, this one, actually. And then you've got a little bit of a lighter grassiness to the beer too. The fruits are quite interesting in this one. I find this one to be quite kind of strong on the tropical front. Maybe this has got a wee bit of Galaxy or Victoria's Secret in it. It definitely has a little bit more pungency to the tropical side of things. So a bit of passion fruit in there. It has got, at the same time though, it has got a wee bit of a kind of... It's definitely got a bit of kind of pineapple-y and sort of apricot, you know. I don't get much in the way of mango out of this one, interestingly. It's more kind of papaya, apricot-y sort of notes that I'm getting here. Maybe a little bit of pineapple. So maybe it's got a wee bit of Idaho 7 or something in it, this one. Maybe there is a little bit of an Idaho 7 quality to this beer. Yeah, I'd wonder about that. Maybe it's Galaxy or Victoria's Secret and a bit of Idaho 7 coming out of this one. But yeah, definitely a wee bit of a strong... There's a wee touch of a stronger passion fruity note to this one, which, as I say, could be Galaxy, Victoria's Secret. It could also... Simcoe usually gives you a bit more of a kind of smooth passion fruit, in fairness. I always enjoy playing Guess the Hops with these beers. But yeah, to me, this one, it's kind of interesting how it goes together. With the smooth kind of creamy oats, you can get more of a lighter tropical fruit note to this one, the pineapples, the papayas, the apricots, these kind of things. But then with the more kind of bitey, wheaty side of the beer, you're getting a little bit more of a kind of darker passion fruit, more pungent passion fruit out of this one. So that's a really interesting point to make about this beer. I don't really get much in the way of an orangey citrus out of this one. It is more kind of tropical, this beer, for me, rather than anything else. Yeah, pretty sure this is a more kind of a tropical leaning New England double for me. The green side of the hops, the more and more that I smell of it, the floral notes come out a little bit more and do become a little bit more pungent. There's a bit of a lighter grassiness to it as well. But yeah, it's quite an interesting one. This, I do find the aroma that's a bit more wheaty and pungent, a little bit, maybe perhaps a little bit more floral and pungent than I've had from some of the other. From the Sunshine Orchard. The Sunshine Orchard, from what I remember, was very oaty and juicy. This one's definitely got a little bit more of a kind of pungenty sort of thing. But I can see, you know, the name Bubble Gummy. That's quite often a descriptor that you would use with a Hefeweizen. Come to think of it, I never clicked with that before when I was saying it had a little bit of a Hefeweizen vibe to it. But yeah, that probably explains, maybe that's why they've named it like that, because it does have a wee bit of that kind of candy bubble gummy note in the malt base. Actually, that's a very good descriptor of it. Just didn't click with me before, but yeah, you will notice that the wheat and things, that sort of, the wheat does give you a little bit of that candied bubble gummy thing. I don't know why, I'm annoyed at myself now that didn't click. But yeah, take a bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. This one should be a really interesting beer, maybe a little bit of a more wheaty leaning double IPA, just going from the aroma. But yeah, this one is the Bubble Gummy 8% New England double IPA, part of the Crush series at Dugas Brewery in Gothenburg here in Sweden. Let's get stuck in. Sláinte, skål. It's interesting. I think when you take this in, it's definitely got a wee bit more of a wheaty kind of bitiness to it, and that lingers at the back of the palate, but otherwise the beer is just as smooth as the other double IPAs that I've had from this brewery in the past. Yeah, definitely fair to say that. Yeah, this one's definitely got that kind of lovely big, that lovely smoothness that you would get from one of the beers. I do remember having a couple of IPAs from these guys, maybe year and a half, 2 years ago, that had a little bit of rice in the malt base as well, and that was really interesting. I thought that was a really, when they had that little bit of oily rice in the middle of the palate, I thought that was a very interesting one. I think that actually was part of the Crush series too, if I remember correctly, and it was one of the first double IPAs that Dugas released through Systembolaget. I wish I could remember the name of that, but yeah, they did have a couple in this series that had rice in them from what I remember, so yeah. But yeah, this is nice. It really has that typical kind of smoothness that you expect of the Dugas beers, and you would never guess, if you blind tasted this, you would probably never guess that it was 8%. You know, the Dugas are ridiculous at this. They cover the booze very, very well. If I was blind tasting this, you know, I would think that it's probably like a 6% or something like that. You know, a standard 6.5 that you'll get from Stigbergets or something like this. So you probably even could pass this one for a paleo in some ways, to be honest with you. But it's a lovely beer again. So yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, let's try and break down the flavour then. So straight away in the middle of your palate, you can feel a little bit of that pale malty quality, that blankets the middle of your tongue. As you come towards the front of that middle third of your palate, you get the kind of more oaty creaminess there. I don't find the oats overly creamy in this one. They just add a nice little bit of smoothness, and the pale malt and the oats kind of work in harmony together away a little bit. But yeah, if you go towards the middle of the palate, you do get a wee tiny bit of there's a wee teeny bit of caramel for me, but then yeah, underneath that you get this kind of oily part to the beer. It's almost like a kind of Werther's Original, and that's where you're covering up the sort of boozy side of the beer. But then when you go towards the back third of your palate, you can feel there's a sort of white bready underlining to the beer there. There's a bit of a wheaty bitiness to it as well, which is interesting. And yeah, I really like that aspect of this beer. It's pretty nice actually. I like how that goes together. Yeah, the more you drink of this one, I think that wheaty bitiness starts to come out a little bit more. Actually, I really like that about this one. This is definitely one of the more wheaty leaning bitey IPAs that I've had from Dugas, and I do remember the other ones just being a little bit kind of smoother and things. So it just goes to show you that they are playing around with the recipes and stuff like that. They're not simply sticking to a kind of base recipe, if you like. They are playing around with the you know, the whole thing, rather than just mucking around with hops and stuff like that. So yeah, it's one-off brew. The Crush series usually are one-off brews, But yeah, this is pretty solid again actually, but one of the more wheaty leaning ones as I've mentioned. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate you've got a very light little bit of earthiness to the beer, but then that spreads forward a little bit and then you almost get a wee touch of a herbal character coming out of it. But yeah, as you push further forward along the sides of the palate, it gradually gets a little bit more kind of, pardon me, a little bit more floral and spicy. Then round the very front curve of the palate you've got that typical bit of kind of lighter grassiness to the beer. But let's focus on the fruity side of the beer now, because this is where I think the focus should be when it's quite a hoppy leaning beer. And I think we are just drinking this one in very good condition as well, I have to say. So yeah, for me again, this one comes across as quite soft in its tropical fruit character. If you go towards the back of that front third of your tongue, you can feel there is a bit of a kind of stronger wheaty, bready sort of thing between front third of your palate and middle third of your palate. There is a wee bit of a kind of strong flavoured wall there. Just in front of that sort of wall you have a nice little bit of a passion fruity quality there. There's I wouldn't say it's kind of interesting. The further you go into the aftertaste, the more strong and pungent that gets, but then as you move further forward from it you do start to get, there is a wee bit of mango coming out in the flavour here, but it really didn't come out in the aroma. As I said, the aroma was a lot more apricotty and you know, pineapple-y and things like that. That's a really interesting point about this beer. But yeah, the flavour that comes out of this is really solid. Where do we describe the fruits from there? Like I say, strong passion fruit at the back, a bit more mango-like as you come forward. But then yeah, you do the apricots that I was getting in the aroma. I don't really get those. I think it is passion fruit and mango. It spreads quite far forward, and then on the very, almost the kind of tip of the tongue, that's when you get a little bit of a kind of like papaya type flavour out of this one. You do get a wee bit of a, how do you say, you do get a little bit of a, what's the flavour I'm looking for here? It's not apricot. You do get just a little bit of a very kind of soft, light It's I think it's pineapple. You do get quite a bit of a light kind of pineapple-y and papaya type flavour out of this one. Could it be a bit of Idaho 7? Eldorado might be the other one that could be involved here. But Eldorado's not that common a hop. I'm really not sure. Always love playing Guess the Hops with these beers. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is Victoria's Secret that's given it a bit of the pungency. I don't think it's Citra. I really don't think it's Citra in this one. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. But yeah, the fruitiness is quite interesting. Like I say, stronger bit of passion fruit at the back, bit more mango-y, and then you've got a wee bit of, you know, as you reach almost the very tip of the tongue, you get a little bit of a kind of papaya, sort of pineapple-y type flavour out of this one. Around the very front edge of the palate there is a wee bit of a citrusy kind of zest to it, that typical kind of grassy zest, but I don't think it's strong enough to suggest like Centennial or anything like that. Centennial of course would be the one. Lemon Drop is the other one as well that could give you a bit of a kind of lemony zest on the tip of the tongue. But yeah, it's another interesting beer, this one. I'm not sure if I like this one more than I did the Sunshine Orchard. That was a really solid beer, but I think probably the best, my favourite IPAs at least, were those ones that had a little bit of rice in them. I really liked those. They just kind of struck a chord with me. But remember, you know, I can give you my opinion on these beers, but beer is always subjective. You know, some of you might think this is the best beer that you've ever had from Dugas. So who knows? So yeah, this one is, again, it is pretty solid, but it's one of the more pungently flavoured double IPAs that I remember having from Dugas actually. So interesting point to make about this one. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, and as I say, the things that linger into the aftertaste here, a bit of the floral notes, the stronger sort of passion fruity notes and a bit of that wheaty character. But yeah, again, another kind of mid-bodied beer. The carbonation is very smooth in this one. The beer, it does have a degree of creaminess to it, but again, it's got that sort of white wheaty bitiness. You've got maybe, I think this is your standard sort of 30 IBUs on the hoppy bitterness scale. As I say, malt base is quite smooth. There's a small degree of sweetness to it, as I said, and I think you've got just a little bit of a kind of tropical fruit to this one as well. It's got a little bit of juiciness to it, but mainly it's quite a smooth tropically fruit note that comes out of this beer. So yeah, this is quite an interesting one. This is quite different from what I've had from Dugas before. And in the flavour as well, I was talking about the aroma being quite bubblegummy. I don't get so much of that in the flavour, in fairness. You don't get so much of that kind of more candied, yeasty Hefeweizen note out of it, but it really is present in the aroma. So I do think the bubblegummy name is a pretty good one for this. But yeah, to sum it up, a more wheaty, bitey, and kind of more pungently fruity double IPA, this one, in my opinion. So yeah, let's leave it at that. So yeah, another interesting beer from Dugas. I'm curious to see what the Dew Sour is like, and what their next double IPA is going to be like as well. But yeah, I need to look up what the name of the one with the rice was for my next review, so I can name drop that one. But yeah, cool to review another Dugas beer for you here on the channel. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this one. I do hope that these guys do a Scotch ale at some point as well. As I say, they're not scared to try different styles, but I don't think I've ever had a Scotch ale from these guys. That would be really interesting. Mikael also told me that he would like to do a Meet the Brewery segment at some point, so I will need to see about organising that when I make it up to Gothenburg sometime as well. But yeah, awesome to review another Dugas beer for you. Always enjoy reviewing these beers every month, so I hope you guys have enjoyed this one. As always, let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Dugas Brewery as well. If you are watching from abroad, as I said earlier, I really recommend this brewery. But thank you again for watching my reviews, and until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff, and do make sure you try some Dugas Brewery.